Okay,
All right.
my my
Go
watch
ahead.
says 6:59. Erev
Okay.
Tov l'kulchem. Good evening. It has
Good.
been my custom in previous years to pick a date between my both parents' yard sites. My mother's yard site is the 29th day of Kislev for Rivka Cyril, Bas Dov V'chana, and my father's yard site is the 7th of Iyar, and it's Yerucham Dov ben David Vigittel. So I compromised sometime in the winter, and I'd like to dedicate my shiur to them. But I want to dedicate tonight's learning to the victims of October 7th and to the fallen soldiers of Tzahal. And may God watch over them and protect them. So
Amen.
I'm going to concentrate tonight on the Haftorah of Parshat Bishalach, with special emphasis on makbilot bamikra, parallelisms in scripture, why this Haftorah was picked, and how it mimics the Torah portion. And to understand, we have to understand what exactly was the period of the Shoftim. So let me read you one pasuk, and I will translate it from the book of Joshua after he dies. Vayavod Yisrael el Hashem kol yemei Yehoshua v'kol yemei hazkenim. Israel worshipped God all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders that were after Joshua. Asher harichu yomim acharei Yoshua v'asher yodu et kol ma'asei Hashem. These people knew the works of God, Asher as im Yisrael, that God had done to Israel. So let's look at it in context. The generation left Egypt, they saw many miracles. They're in the desert. The next generation, they see the manna, they see the quail, they see the water, Be'er Miriam. They see many things that God purposely does for them. Their clothes don't wear out, their feet don't swell. Joshua's time, he defeats 31 kings. Then there's the Zikanim, the elders. And then you start having a period of judges. And the problem is memory. You're getting to a fourth generation, a fifth generation. All they know about the periods of miracles during the desert and during the conquering of the land of Canaan was what's the stories that were passed down from one generation to another. But the further you are removed from the event, the less important it becomes to you. It doesn't make that impression. And just to give you a timeline, is that after the Zikanim pass away, there were 40 years with the first judge, on Natiel ben Kenaz, and then there was 80 years followed by Ehud ben Gera. And then there was 1 year of Shamgar ben Anat. The point being is it's already 120 years. Most people did not feel the presence of God. And you could tell me, well, there was a Mishkan, there was a central tabernacle, and it was in Shiloh, but most people were not doing their job. They weren't going there. So you have a period where the judges, God sends individual people to save the children of Israel despite themselves because they have gotten off the path. And I'm going to start in the fourth parak of Shoftim. And these three pasukim precede the Haftorah. Vayosifu b'nei Yisrael asot hara b'nei Hashem. The children of Israel continued to do bad or evil in the eyes of God. Ehud mate. And Ehud, who was the previous judge, had already died. He was no longer in the scene. And God delivered them or sold them the hands of Yavin, the king of Canaan, Asher Malach beChatzor. His capital was Chatzor. Vesartzavo Sisra, and his general of his army was Sisra, Hu Yoshev Bacharoshet Hagoyim. You could either say that's the name of a place, or it's in the forest of the nations, or the foundry, because the Canaanites were very skilled in ironworks, and you'll see why. Vayitzaku b'nei Yisrael ad Hashem. The children of Israel cried out to God, Ki tishamei ot rechav barzel lo, because there were 900 chariots that Sisera had, v'hulachatz et b'nei Yisrael b'chazka esrim shana, and he was ruling over them mightily. He blasphemed God. That's what it says. Whenever it says b'chazka, it was not only that they were subjugated, he'd make fun of the Almighty. After all, you're God's people. If you were so good, how could we be ruling over you? Udvara Isha Neviah. Now we begin the Haftorah. Dvara was a prophetess. Eshet Lapidot, a fiery woman. I really like that interpretation. We're going to discuss a few other interpretations. She had spunk. No one told her what to do. She saw the problem, she tackled it. He shofta et Yisrael va'etahi. She judged Israel at that time. The rabbis don't know what to do with that, because in the rabbinic mind, som tasim olecha melech v'lo malka. When you establish a leader, a king, it's a king, not a queen. They can understand a woman being a prophetess, but to be a judge, because a woman, really by halacha, at least the halacha that we have developed now, women cannot be a judge and women can't be a witness. So they have a problem with it. And she sat under a palm tree of Devorah. Now it's very interesting. They say, well, she all right, the Devorah that speaks, that they said the palm tree of Devorah wasn't Devorah the prophetess, but it was our first Devorah that we mentioned in the Bible. And who was that? Meineket Rivka. Rivka was buried, that the Devorah, who had been the nursemaid, had always been with Rivka, was buried there. So they named it Tomer Devorah, the palm tree of Devorah. Bein Haramah, Vein Betel, Bahar Ephraim, between these two cities, Vayalu Eleha B'nei Yisrael LaMishpat, and the children of Israel came to her for judgment. So the rabbis have a problem with it because it doesn't fit their halachic narrative. So they go out of their way to say, well, she wasn't a judge, she was an arbiter. So people came to them and she would discuss a solution and they agreed on it. Well, that's nice, but there's other ways to interpret it. The real one was that there were not many qualified men to do this. A lot of them were steeped with idolatry. And women have intuitive sense. They have chachma yetera. Women have extra knowledge. They can size up things. And of course, being Rosh Chodesh, which was a few days ago, why was that a women's holiday? Because when the men were making fools of themselves and contributing their gold and silver to the golden calf, the women said, we don't want to have any part of it. You're fooling yourself. It's not anything that's real. So in her time, she was one of the few knowledgeable people. And another thing you could say was, we have this concept called Horat Sha'ah. The times needed this emergency. We see it with the famous one of Elijah battling the 400 prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel. Well, he sacrificed. And according to the law, you can't bring a sacrifice outside the temple. But he did it because the times dictated. And the same thing over here. The times dictated that she would be in charge. Vatishlach vatikol levorach ben Avinoam mikedesh Naphtali. And she called Barak to come from Naphtali. Okay, he's going to lead the army. Now, there's other translations for lapidot, which means wicks. She or her husband were in charge of the wicks that were needed for the menorah in the Mishkan. Okay, during the summer, the nights were short. During the winter, the nights were long. So depending on the length, it was an art and science to balance the fuel and the wicks so they should burn the proper length of time. Vatomer Elov, and she said to him, Halot Tzivad Hashem Elokei Yisrael, the God of Israel has commanded, Lech umashachta bahar tavar. Go, umashachta means to draw, to pull. Pull yourself to the Mount Tabor. V'lakachti imcha aseret alafim ish. Assemble 10,000 men. Mibnei Naphtali ubnei Zevulun, from the tribes of Naphtali and Zevulun. Mashachti elecha el nachal Kishon, and I will draw you towards the brook of Kishon. At Sisra sar tzava Yavin, Sisra his general of King Yavin, vet richbo vet hamono, his chariots and his multitudes. Unatatihu biadecha, and I will give him over to you into your hand. Vayomer leha Barak, Barak said to her, Im telchi imi v'halachti, if you go with me, then I will go. Vim lo telchi imi lo elech, and if you don't go with me, I won't go. It wasn't a question of Barak being afraid. He didn't think he was worthy to lead the troops to go out into battle. And he thought if Devorah was with him, then due to her merits, they would be successful. Vatomer haloch elechi mach. Yes, I'm going to go with you. Efes ki lo tieh tifartecha, but you won't have the glory ala derech asher ata holech, on the way that you're going. Ki im biad isha, because through a woman's hand, yimkor ad Hashem es Sisra, God will deliver Sisra. Vatokam Devorah, Devorah got up. Vatelech in Barak Kedsha, and she went with Barak to Kadesh. V'yazek Barak as Zavun vet Naphtali Kedsha, and Barak mustered the troops from Zavulun and Naphtali to Kedsha. Vayal baraglav, and he went up on foot. Aseret alfei ish, 10,000 men. Vatali mo Devorah, and Devorah went with him. V'chever akeni nifrad mikayin, Chever the Kenite had separated from Kayin b'pnei chovav chotein Moshe. All right, so Moshe's father-in-law was Yitro, and he and his band of people converted. They came along to the land of Israel. They settled around Jericho, and one of the families was Chever Hakeni, and he happened to be in that area. Vayet ahalo ad Elon b'tza'ananim asher et Kedesh. He pitched his tent in that area. And v'yagidu l'Sisra, and then it was told to Sisra, the general, ki Allah Barak ben Avinom har Tavar, that Barak had ascended to Mount Tabor. Now, that was a very strategic place. So even if you had 900 chariots, you have to run them uphill. You could hold off a large army by being on top of the mountain. Vayazek Sisra et kol richbo, and Sisra mustered all his chariots to Sham me'od rechav barzel, 900 chariots of iron, vet kol ama sherito, and all the people that were with him. Mecharoshet agoyim, from that either the place, the forest of the nations, till the brook of Kishon. Vatomer Devorah el Barak. So Devorah gives the first command. Kum ki zeh hayom asher nasan et Hashem et Sisra b'yadecha. This is the day that God is going to deliver in your hand General Sisra. Halo Hashem yatzal lefanecha. God is going before you. That is reminiscent in the Torah portion. When the children of Israel are crying out, what does God say? Ad Hashem yilachem lachem v'atem tacharishun. Or Moshe said to the people, God will fight for you and you people be quiet. God is going to conduct the whole campaign. And the same thing, God is orchestrating this battle. Vayered Barak mehar Tavor, vaseret alafim ish acharav. And Barak and his army, which was counterintuitive, instead of having the high ground, they already descended and they went to make war against all these chariots. Vayaham ad Hashem et Sisra et kol rechav et kol hamachaneh, and God confounded them, mixed up Sisra, his chariots, his whole camp, Lafi Charev. Lafi Charev was named Barak. Before they got the sword, they were decimated. Before Barak, Vayered Sisra me'al hamerkava, Vayonos baraglav. And Sisra, the big general, descended from his chariot and he fled on foot. Uvarak rodaf acharei arechav acharei amachaneh ad charoshet hagoyim. So Barak pursued the chariots and the camp till the assembly of the nations or the forest of the nations. Vayipol kol machne Sisra lefi cherev, and all the camp of Sisera were put towards the sword. Lo nishar ad echad. It was a complete rout. There were no survivors except Sisera. The Sisera nos baraglav, and Sisera fled on his feet. El Oel Yael, to the tent of Yael, Eshet Chever Akeni, the wife of Chever, Ki Shalom ben Yavin melech Chatzar, Uvein beit Chever Hakeni, because there was a peace treaty between the king of Chatzar and Chever Hakeni, but it wasn't a peace treaty. The rabbis say, well, what did he do? Yael will violate the peace treaty. And no, there wasn't a peace treaty with Sisera, just with the king. Vatetze Yael likrat Sisera. Yael goes out to greet Sisera. Vatomer elav. She says to him, Surah Adoni, Surah Elai Altira. Turn, my lord, turn to me. Don't be afraid. Vayasare leha oela. He turned to her tent. Vatechaseyu basmicha. She covered him up with a blanket. Vayomer elaha. He said to her, Hashkini na ma'at mayim. Perhaps you can give me, please, a little drink. Ki sameti, because I'm thirsty. It's almost reminiscent. I cracked up when I read it because another famous line, Hashkini na ma'at mayim mikadech, that was the words that Eliezer said to Rivka. Can you give me from your jug? Ki sameti, I'm thirsty. Vatiftach et naorech chalav. She opened up the skin. In those days, they kept liquids in skins of milk. Vatashkeyu, she gave him to drink. Vatachaseyu, and she covered him. Vayomer eleha, amod pesach oel, and he said to her, stand at the entrance of the tent. Vaya imish yavo shelech v'amar hayesh po ish v'amar dayin. And if someone comes and asks, is there a man here? You say no. Vatikach Yael Eshet Chever. So Yael took at Yesod HaOhel, the tent peg, Vatosem et Amakevet Biyada, and she took a hammer in her hand. Vatavoe lahabalat. She went stealthily, quietly. Vatitka et Hayah Teid Barakato. She hammered the tent peg in his temple. Vatiz nach baretz. He slumped over to the earth. V'hunir dam, and he was in a deep sleep. Vayof, and he had been exhausted. Vayamot, and he died. Now, by the way, we will go into the details. There's more beneath the surface than this that the song of Devorah will elucidate on. V'hinei Varak rodef et Sisra. Barak is still pursuing Sisera. Vatetza Yael Likrato. Yael goes out to greet him. Vatomer lo lech vareka. She says to him, "Gam and come here. I will show you et ha'isha asher atam avakesh, the man that you're seeking." Vayavo eleha. He came to her. V'hinei Sisera nofel met, and Sisera had fallen down and he was dead. Vayated barakato, and the tent peg was in his temple. And God humbled that day the king of Canaan in front of the children of Israel. Vatelech yad b'nei Israel haloch v'kasha, and the hand of the children of Israel was progressively harsh over Yavin, the king of Canaan. In other words, this was the beginning of the battle. This was the first war. This was the first encounter. It took many battles. It took many months till they freed themselves. Ad asher hichritu et Yavin melech Canaan, till they destroyed Yavin, the king of Canaan. Vatoshar Devorah uVarak ben Avinoam, and Devorah and Barak, the son of Avinoam, sang. Vayomahu lemor, on that day sang. Now, so this is written, if you look in the Torah and you look in a scroll, which some synagogues don't read the Haftorah out of a book, they read it out of a scroll that is written just like the Torah, that there are no signs, no kudot in it. But this is the way the Shira is. The first line is narrative. The next line, line 2, is a word, space, 3 words, space, a word. And the third line is a few words, a space, and a few words. So it's called half brick on full brick. In other words, there are designated spaces in pure poetry. Okay, now lemor means the following, just like in Az Yoshir, Moshe said it, and then the children of Israel. So here, Devorah sang it, and then the children of Israel sang it. And then, of course, the rabbis have a problem with that. But let's face it, this is tefillah. Tefillah is not, even though we'll call it shira, these were not the top 20 songs. This was prayer and praise to God. Now, you know, the children of Israel had a right to sing Shirah to God. They were saved from Egypt. It was the angels that wanted to sing, and God said, how could you sing my creation? My creatures are being destroyed. But with the children of Israel, they had every right to sing it then, and they had every right to sing it under Devorah, because they themselves had escaped from the wicked hands. And then it was Pharaoh, or here Yavin, the king of Canaan. Bifroa Faraot beYisrael. It's very interesting, these words. Now, when you read something in poetry, there are many layers. And I'm not giving you everything. I'm giving you a few things to understand. So when outbreaks or violence or vengeance or things out of the ordinary occurred to Israel, till the Canaanites came on the scene, it was peaceful. But then they were being held hostage. Behitnatev am. Behitnatev am. People volunteered for God. Baruch Hu Adoshem. They blessed the Almighty. Their lives became very dangerous. And then those who sacrificed themselves, God blessed them. Shimu Malachim Hazinu Rosnim. Shimu, listen, kings. Hazinu, give ear. Rosnim, princes. It's almost reminiscent of we have Hazinu. Hazinu Hashamayim Vadabera, give ear, heaven and earth. V'tishma haaretz, and let the land hear. So it's the same thing. It's poetry. Anochi ladoshem, I am for God. Anochi ashira, I will sing presence. I will sing to God. Azamer Ladashem Elokei Israel. I will sing praises. I will offer praises of the children of Israel. So just let's go over the word paraot. At that time, people left the Torah and foreign nations overcame them and they were punished. It could also mean payback to the Canaanites for all the evil that they inflicted. What does it mean volunteered? We said the word behitnadev. They returned to the Torah, or they followed Barak, or the teachers went out and brought the people back to worshiping God. And then, as soon as we talk about the God of Israel, it gives you some imagery about the giving of the Torah. Ad Hashem b'tzeitcha miseir b'sadcha mistei Edom. God, when he went out from Seir, and Seir was where Esau lived, b'tzadcha, when he was marching in the fields of Edom, Eretz Ro'asha, the land trembled, Gam Shomayim Natafu, the heavens dripped, Gam Avim Nafu Mayim, the clouds dripped water. Now, what's it referring to? If you remember, before God gave the Torah to Israel, he went to Esau. You want the Torah? Well, what's written in it? Don't kill. Well, we can't give that up. He went to Yishmael again. What's written in it? Don't steal. No, that's how we make a living. So it's reminiscent. It's giving this imagery. Harim nozlu mipnei Ad Hashem. Mountains melted before God. Zeh Sinai. This is Mount Sinai mipnei Ad Hashem Elokei Israel. Before God, the God of Israel. Bimei Shamgar ben Anat. Shamgar was a previous judge. Bimei Yael, in the days of Yael Hakeni, Chodlu Arachot. It was so bad, caravans ceased from going on the main roads. V'holchei Netivot, they went on minor roads. Yechu Arachot Akal Kalot. Or they went on circuitous roads. They went out of their way to avoid the main thoroughfare. Chodlu parazon b'Yisrael chodelu. Okay. People stopped living in open cities. When Moshe sent the spies, what did he say? He had many criteria. And one of the questions he asked them was, see if they're living in open cities or in closed cities. Are they really strong? They live in open cities. If they depend on the fortifications, they live in closed cities. So people, it was so bad, they didn't feel secure living in open cities. Ad shekamti devora, till I, Devorah, arose, shekamti em Israel, that I arose, mother in Israel. At that point, the rabbis criticized her because she was becoming too arrogant. She shouldn't have said that. Yivchar Elohim Chadashim. People at that time had chosen new gods. Oz Lochem Sha'arim. Then, because they were not following God, fighting came to their gates. Mogeni Miroev Romach Ba'arbaim Elef B'Yisrael. As a result, there wasn't a spear or a shield among 40,000. Okay, the Jewish people were not cut out for war. They couldn't manufacture weapons, and they didn't have the armaments they needed. Libi, my heart is l'chokekei Yisrael, to the lawgivers of Israel. Hamit nadvim ba'am, that volunteered to teach the people, Baruch Hu Adoshem, blessed is God. Now, who are these people? Rochvei Atonot Sechorot. Either they were the judges or they were the teachers, the scholars, and they rode on white donkeys or white mules, and those were known for their swiftness. They rode on them so they could reach all the surrounding towns and teach the people. Yoshvei Almidin, or it's referring to the people who sat in the courts or in the judgment. Vaholche al derech sicho, or the people, the ordinary people that went on the roads and to speak up. They would tell about God. Mikol b'chatzasim bein mash'abim, from the sound of the people, the marauders, the people that was the sound of the shooting of the arrows, bein mash'abim. It was very difficult to go to the drawing of water, to go to the wells, to go to the brooks, and try to draw water without being attacked. Sham, there, Yitanud Sitkot Adushem. There they will recount the righteous acts of God, Sitkot Pirzono B'Yisrael, the righteous accounts of God that he did to Israel in the open cities. Oz Yardu Lasharim Am Hashem. They went down to the gates, the nation of God. So in other words, she was painting a picture of, it was hard to travel. It was hard to go to the well or the brook. You always had to be careful because there were marauders there. There were people that were laying in wait for them. Uri Devora, Uri Dabri Shir. Because Devora was a little arrogant, her prophecy had left her. So Barak says to her, awake, awake, Devora, awake, the one who speaks the song. And then she said, Kum Barak, arise, Barak, B'shavei Shavyecha ben Avinoam. And Barak, the son of Avinoam, capture your prisoners. Oz Yorat Sarid. So a small remnant. Remember, the Jewish people at that time did not have a large army. The remnant went down Ladirim against the mighty nation. Ad Hashem Yerad Liba Giborim. Hashem, help me go down against the mighty or the strong. Mini Ephraim Sharasham B'Amalek. From the tribe of Ephraim, their roots were against Amalek. So what is this referring to? It's referring to Yehoshua, who was from Ephraim, and he battled Amalek, and we have that again in the parsha of Beshalach, because Amalek attacks the children of Israel, and what does it say? Ve'achalosh Yehoshua et Amalek. Joshua weakened Amalek by the sword. Acharecha Binyamin b'amamecha. And now she's prophesizing. Behind you is Binyamin against your people, amongst your people. Binyamin, in the future there will be a king Shaul, and he will battle Amalek. Mini Machir Yardu Mechokakim. From Machir came down the lawgivers. Umizvulun Moshim B'Shevet Sofer. And from Zevulun, the tribe, there were the scribes, and they used the quill. The Sarai Yisachar im Devora, and the officers of Yisachar were with Devora. The Yisachar came Barak, and so was Barak, Ba'emek Shulach Baraglav. They were sent down by foot in the valley. Biflagot Reuven. So she praised Yisachar, and she praised Zevulun. But then she looks to Reuven. See, the problem was, whenever there was a danger, only the certain tribes that lived around that area were involved. There was no sense of a national unity. There was no sense of all the tribes coming in and help. So what happened here was she castigates a few tribes. The indecisiveness of Reuven, Gedolim Chikei Lev, was a very big deceit, because Reuven was sitting on the fence. Now Reuven is Aver Hayarden on the other side of the Jordan, and he's thinking, now who's going to win? I have to be with the winning side, but if I show my hand first, it might be against me. So he was really playing both sides. Lama yashafta bein hamishpatayim. Why did you sit on the borders? Lishmoa shrikot adarim. To listen to the bleating sounds of the flock. Remember, Ruvain was living in Aver HaYarden, the other side of the Jordan, because we learned in Parashat Matot, Ruvain and Gad had a lot of sheep, a lot of cattle. It had good vegetation. They didn't want to go any further, so they settled there. Liflagot Ruvain, the indecisiveness of Ruvain, Gedolim Chikre Lev. There has to be a big investigation. Why did Ruvain shirk his responsibility? Gilad be'evar ha'ydain shochay. Now Gilad was on the other side. V'dan lama yagor aniyot. Why was the tribe of Dan storing their valuables in ships? Asher yoshav l'chof yamim. Asher sat at the seashore. Val mifratzav yishkon. And he was just dwelling on his borders. He was afraid maybe he'd be attacked by the sea. He didn't come to the aid. Zavulun am cheref nafsho lamus. Zavulun risked his life. V'naftali al marome sada. And Naphtali was in the heights of the field, in the battlefield. So one of the functions, besides praising the Shvatim, the tribes that helped defeat Yavin and Sisera, she's castigating, she's rebuking the tribes that stood idly by. Bo malachim nilchamu, az nilchamu malchei Canaan. Other kingdoms came and fought with the kings of Canaan. Betanoch al mei Megiddo. From these are two places, and it was a large distance from Tanakh to the waters of Megiddo. Betza kesev lo lokachu. They didn't even take. King Yavin didn't even have to bribe them. They didn't even have to ask for money. They did it. They volunteered. They volunteered because they wanted to wipe out the tribes of Naphtali and Zevulun and Yisachar. Min hashamayim nilchamu. The heavens fought. HaKochavim im psilotam nilchamu im Sisra. The stars and the constellations fought against Sisera. Okay, they made it so hot that the chariot drivers and the people that were in the chariots, it was so hot, they took off their armor. They thought they would cool off in the brook of Kishon. Nachal Kishon Grafam. The brook of Kishon swept them away. Nachal Kedumim, it's an ancient brook. Nachal Kishon, the brook of Kishon. Tidrechi Nafshi Oz. I myself stomped on it vigorously. At one moment it was hard. When I was on there, when the army of Canaan stepped in, it became soft. It was a violent river. It was surging. It swept them away to sea. Ozhume ikve sus. The horses' heels were pounded midharot harot abirav by the gallopings of the mighty. Oru Meros. Now Meros is probably a place. Omar Malach Hashem, says the angel of God. Oru Oror Yoshveha. Cursed be its inhabitants. Kilo va'u le'ezrat Hashem. They do not come to the aid of God. What does it mean, the aid of God? They did not come to help the tribes of Israel. Le'ezrat Hashem bagiborim. To the salvation of God against the mighty. Tovorach minashim Yael. Yael should be blessed among the women. Eshet Chever Hakeni, the wife of Chever, the Kenite, minashim ba'ohel devorach. She should be blessed from the women of the tent. And now that is allusion to our imahot. Talks about the tent of Rivka, the tent of Sarah, the tent of Leah. She is as worthy as any one of the matriarchs. Mayim sha'al chalav natna. He asked for water, she gave milk. Besefel adirim hikriva chema. In a mighty bowl, she brought him cream. Yoda, her hand was layasei to shalachna. She extended forth to the peg of the tent. Vimina, and her right hand lahalmut hamelim, to the hammer of laborers. Vaholma Sisra Mochaka Rosha. She hammered Sisra, she severed its head. Umachatza, she smashed him. Vacholfa Rakaso, and pierced his temple. Bain, okay, so there's, let me just see. Okay. Okay. Bein ragleha kora nofal shachav. Bein ragleha kora nofal basher kara sham nofal shadud. Between her feet, he kneeled, he fell, he laid. Between her feet, he kneeled, he fell. Where he knelt, there he fell. Shadud, vanquished. Now, the rabbis interpret it. This is where he gets a little X-rated. How did she tire him out? She made love with him 7 times. That's what they learned from this. And then he was exhausted. No wonder she didn't hear him. He didn't hear her. He was out. So he was out before the peg hit him in the temple. But again, the rabbis, they praise Yael, but what are they going to do? Well, she did it. She was doing God's work. They have a rough time with that, just like they have a rough time with Esther marrying Achashverosh. But, it's written there. You have to accept it. Ba'ad hachalon nishkafa v'tayabev Aim Sisra ba'ad ha'esh nav. And at the window, looking down into the distance, is the mother of Sisra, and she's wailing, she's weeping through the window or the lattice. Madua boshesh richbo lavo. Why is his chariot late or delayed from coming? And we've had that term boshesh also in Parshat Tisa. The people saw that Moshe was delayed. Madua echeru fa meimar kabosov. Why the footsteps, the hoof prints of the chariots? Why are they coming in so late? Chachmot soraseha ta'anena. So the wise women that are waiting on her, that are serving her, will answer her. Afita shiva morela. She also will answer. She will also say her words. Halo yintzu yichalku shalo. Perhaps they found in the dividing all the spoil, racham rachamotayim l'rosh kever, and each person is getting a comely woman or 2 comely women for the pickings. Shalal tzavaim l'sisra. There was booty of colored garments for Sisra. Shalal tzavaim rikma. The colored garments were even embroidered. Seva rikma taim l'tzavrei shalal. The colored, embroidered garments are the necks of the people who are looting. So should all the enemies of God be destroyed. Vo havav, and those that love God, keseit hashemesh, like the sun is rising, bigvurato, in its might. Vatishko ta'aretz arba'im shana. And the land was quiet for 40 years. I'll never forget when Menachem Begin signed the treaty with Anwar Sadat at the White House lawn. He quoted that pasuk, "Vatishko ta'aretz arba'im shana." So let me just give you some takeaways. On the one hand, in Bashalach, there's Pharaoh. On the other hand, in Devorah's time, there's Yavin, king of Canaan. One had 600 chariots. One had 900, and the Medrash talks about it. You know, after Pharaoh's army was destroyed, the sea wanted the chariots, they wanted the bodies, they wanted the horses, they wanted the loot. And God says, no, you got to spit them out on dry land so my people will know that there's no more Egyptian army. And the sea said, but they're mine. He said, in the future, I will pay you back 1.5 times. And so when the chariots were decimated in the brook of Kishon, they were all swept out to the sea. So here we have the brook of Kishon versus the Sea of Reeds. We have the Song of Deborah versus the Song of Moshe. We have half brick versus full brick in both. And we also have battle directed by God. We also have Lamor, that the leader says the first verse, and then the community answers with that same verse. And those are some of the parallelisms which I found very interesting and exciting. And I hope I've opened up this Haftorah to you. And I have no problem with the women. They understand it. Unfortunately, on the men's side, very few people stay in the shul. Every Shabbat, we reenact the Yetziat Mitzrayim, and they go to the Kiddush Club. But they're missing out on great literature and great poetry, and they should know their Tanakh. So I hope I've elucidated a few things. I hope if there are questions, I open it up. Not that I know any answers. Okay.
Everyone, if you want to unmute yourself so you can ask questions. Because I think everyone was muted. I was just noticing that the Sephardim miss all the action.
That's right. They only start with
the
Song of Devorah because they don't have any patience. This is the longest of Torah you will have. You know, listen, you can only be in shul so much.
Okay, that's an interpretation.
Good observation.
So it wasn't the milk.
Warm milk will only go
because warm milk. I mean, that's what you're supposed to have if you can't sleep, right?
Okay, it was a warm milk plus.
Cindy? Oh, I thought you wanted to ask something.
No, I want to thank Matthew. That was really interesting discussion.
Very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I felt like I learned a lot.
Okay.
I don't know that I've ever really...
Amy, they usually have comments.
Yeah.
Amy, you have to unmute yourself, Amy.
What can I say? Devorah goes on in her song, and one of the things is that in the Parsha, Miriam does lead the women in song, but not a whole long drawn out thing. She summarizes it in just basically one sentence.
It's true, but they already had heard it. So she just gave you the takeaway.
But it's interesting because usually they say, there were 10 parts of speech and women got 9 and men only got 1. But in that case, Moshe is the one that goes on in the song, and Miriam has it summed up, whereas in the Haftorah, Devorah goes on in the song.
That's an interesting point.
Well, I thank you, and I hope I didn't speak too long.